This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. Today is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Binghamton Now is live on the air. And your phone number, 607-772-1290. Go ahead, call and participate on Binghamton Now. WNBF. Good morning. Everything is fine in Binghamton and New York State and in the USA today. In case you were wondering, everything is 10-4. If you have any thoughts about that, anything that might potentially contradict my assessment of things, everything based on what I'm saying so far looks good. But if you have information to the contrary, feel free to call on Binghamton Now. Spygate. Linda's son and her husband have been arrested, and this is a major scandal. Details limited, but more details will eventually emerge. So Linda's son was a top level person in New York State government working for both Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul. So this is pretty bad. So as far as what it means in the grand scheme of things, it's hard to say. It's early, very early in the case. But essentially, she is accused of scheming to advance the interest of China in New York State. It'd be different if Linda's son was accused of scheming to advance the interest of Binghamton or Broome County in Albany. We need more people to advance the interest of folks here in the southern tier. We don't need people scheming to advance the interest of China while working in New York State government. The allegations were discussed by federal prosecutors. The indictment was unsealed about 24 hours ago. It charges son with failure to register as a foreign agent, visa fraud, alien smuggling, and money laundering conspiracy. Her husband, Christopher Hu, allegedly facilitated the transfer of millions of dollars in kickbacks for personal gain, according to prosecutors. This is a story by Aaron Katursky from ABC News. Son and Hu pleaded not guilty during their arraignment in Brooklyn federal court. I enjoy stories that provide descriptions of the clothing. According to Aaron Katursky's story, in case you were wondering about their attire, son appeared in a black pantsuit with a red blouse, while her husband appeared in slacks and a pale dress shirt. A pale dress shirt. What color, Aaron? While working for the Cuomo and Hochul administration, son allegedly acted as an unregistered agent of China, while her husband allegedly laundered the proceeds, enabling them to buy a $3.6 million house and a $1.9 million condo. The house was in Manhasset. The condo was in Hawaii. She allegedly blocked Taiwan representatives from access to the governor, worked to prevent meetings with Taiwanese officials, and sought to shape the public statements the governor made on China. Assistant U.S. Attorney Alexander Solomon said, "This is no ordinary financial fraud." Oh, this is a scandal, massive scandal in New York State government. Prosecutors said Son and Hu operated more than 80 different accounts, and most of the evidence is in Chinese. Son was released on a $1.5 million bond, and her husband was released on a $500,000 bond. So these people, potentially guilty of serious crimes, are out on the streets. Where Where is the outcry from the Law and Order crowd? They ostensibly were acting in New York State, infiltrating New York State government at the behest of the Chinese government, and now they're out on the streets. For all we know, they're going to be living in Endicott for the next couple of months. Their next court appearance scheduled for September 25th. In a statement to ABC News, attorneys for Sun called the charges inflammatory. The statement from her attorney said, "We are disappointed by the filing of these charges, which are inflammatory and appear to be the product of an overly aggressive prosecution. We are also troubled by aspects of the government's investigation. As we said in court, our client is eager to exercise her right to a speedy trial and to defend against these accusations in the proper forum, a court of law." All right, well, they're presumed innocent. Again, thanks to New York's bail laws. Well, this is a federal case. Anyway, they're out on bail, so watch out. Attention law enforcement, be on the lookout for Linda Sun and her husband, Christopher Hu, probably driving around in an expensive car, heading west through the town of Nichols at 118 miles an hour. It's 9:16 WNBF. Other than that, though, everything in New York State seems fine. Gas prices continuing to plunge as we look forward with enthusiasm to November 5th. Let's take a phone call. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Bob. It's Gary from the West Side. Hello.
Hello.
So, I'd just like to relate a story, if I may. I was out enjoying some of New York State's wonders. I was at Tahoganock Falls yesterday. And while I was there, I was looking at the waterfall, and I heard some people come by. They were close to me, and they were speaking another language. So, but eventually they came and they were right next to me. So I said hello to them. They said hello, and we started a conversation. And they were from Denmark, visiting, enjoying New York State. They were there at Tahoganock Falls on the way to Niagara Falls. And we had a good little discussion going. So I said, you know what, I have to ask you. How do you guys feel about Donald Trump? And right away, you know, they had this look of concern, I guess, on their faces, and they said to me, "Well, you know, we are concerned about him. We're not sure whether he has the mental wherewithal to be the president. They're worried that he might do something like crazy because they, you know, like set off bombs or something like that. They just said that they were very concerned and very worried about what he might do. You know, and I said, well, how do you feel about Kamala Harris? And they said, well, you know, it seems like most of like their friends and where they live, they're feeling like they're more receptive to her than to Donald Trump. I thought that was interesting. You know, here's somebody else's opinion from another country, how they feel about what's going on in American politics. You know,
it is interesting. Concerned. It's troubling.
Yeah,
troubling that the rest of the
nice people.
The rest of the world is watching. Never forget when you go to the polls in November, the rest of the world is watching.
So they seemed a little bit liberal to me, and so, you know, I would imagine, because they said a lot of their friends, you know, have these same feelings. They're very concerned of what would happen. And what would happen if Kamala Harris wins and Donald Trump all of a sudden decides to pull the same crap that he pulled the last time. So they were concerned about that, too.
I think the concern should be greater because he'll have nothing to hold him back. You know, because of term limits, say if, and let's be honest, we're here on WNBF radio, so since we're among friends, let's say it's highly likely that he will win and easily defeat the Democrats in November, so he'll wind up having another 4-year term in the White House, but with no prospects for a third term. There's nothing that protects America or the world from his vengeance. So say if something makes him mad, which I know is hard to believe, but say if anything happens between January 20th, 2025 and January 20th, 2029 that really bothers him, he could, well, use your imagination what he could do. He could do anything because he'll be the most powerful person on the planet for 4 years, and there's nothing to hold him back. At that point, without any concern about going back before his employers, the American voters, hey, all bets are off. And remember, thanks to the Supreme Court, the Supremes basically said, hey, when you're president of the United States, go right ahead, do anything you want, and just say that it was related to your official duties as president, and basically you can get away with it.
Bob, do you think like the fear factor has something to do with Donald Trump's possibilities of getting elected? You know, like that. I mean, it appears to me, and with you know, there are some reasonings behind the fear factor. You know, but do you think that they're trying to scare us into thinking that if Donald Trump gets elected, that he's just going to try to overthrow the government and stuff like that? Or do you think that?
No, I mean, he has said it's on tape that he'll be a dictator on day one. So it's not conjecture.
Was that a joke or is that serious?
I don't know. Hey, I didn't say it. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't joke about that. Just between you and me, if I run for office, I'm not going to joke about becoming a dictator. There's just something about joking about dictatorship that it falls flat. You have to be able to read the room, and I don't understand what kind of crowd in the United States would think that joking about being a dictator, even on day one, is funny or appropriate.
I agree with that, and let me say this too, Bob. Like right now, it seems like Donald Trump is going on a lot of podcasts where you can see him on podcasts if you're into that type thing, and he's saying what he wants to say about the election and stuff like this. I don't see Kamala Harris on too many podcasts. I don't see her like really giving too many public interviews or anything like that. She's pretty well protected so far.
It's a great strategy when your opponent your opponent is self-destructing. Stay out of his way. There's absolutely at this point on September 4th, approximately 2 months before Election Day, there's absolutely no upside for Kamala Harris to start doing interviews with people like me, who inevitably will ask a few questions that she might find challenging. Whereas as long as her opponent continues to behave in an unpredictable and sometimes bizarre fashion, some call it weird, hey, remember, in any newscast, whether it's TV or radio or any newspaper article or even online stories, there's only a limited amount of space that's going to be devoted on any given day to the presidential campaign. If I were running the Democratic campaign, I would say to both the president and vice presidential candidates, I say, stand down. Stand down. We'll let you know when or if it's appropriate to start doing interviews. In the meantime, allow the Republican presidential and vice presidential candidates to get the spotlight. I think it's helpful for the American people to see exactly who these people are, who the candidates are. And at this time, you know, Democrats stand nothing to gain. I believe she is going to outline more of her economic proposals today. But even that, why bother? Why not just...
Well, we need to know because the American public wants to know.
Well, I agree. As a reporter and as an American, we as Americans need to know, and we're entitled to know. I'm saying if I were her top campaign advisor, I would say no interviews. Whatever you do, no interviews.
I understand your point.
Yeah, and again,
because she can't screw up, right?
Well, that's the thing. Because,
Yeah.
the liberal media, the minute that she does another word salad, the liberal media will attack her. The New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and MSNBC will be on the attack even if she misspeaks. So I'm sure that's the logic of doing essentially no interviews. They did the one interview a few days ago on CNN News and apparently caused themselves no damage, but you got to be careful at this point if you're running a campaign. Now, yes, as a patriotic American and as a journalist, I do say it's time. It's time for her to start doing lots of interviews. And the first interview should be when she calls 607-772-1290. Gary, thank you for your call. It's 9:25 at News Radio, WNBF. Back to the busy phone lines. Dave in Vestal, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Hey, I was listening to you and Gary, and I got to thinking, probably 80 to 90%, maybe even higher, Bob, of the country they don't care about politics. They don't pay attention at all. But now we've gotten down to, we're a couple months away. People will start paying attention, Bob. So it is important that Kamala, I said it right. Do I get a star, Bob?
You get a gold star. No, not a gold star, a golden star. There's a difference. Just like when you're looking at ingredients on snacks, there's a big difference between something that is described as containing chocolate versus something that's called chocolatey. But you get a golden star, so it certainly looks nice, but it's worthless.
Okay. But like I was saying, it's important that she get out there and talk, Bob, and show everybody, show the country, actually how talentless, all her missing qualities, that just show what she's about. She needs to do that, Bob. She has to. Your advice to just hide and stay away, that won't work, Bob. Either way, whether she hides or whether she talks, she's going to lose.
Well, I already said that she's probably going to lose. And I say that because this is WNBF, your Republican station. This station is laser focused at the Republican and conservative demographic. So, of course, she's going to lose. She's going to lose bigly.
I don't know about that, Bob, because...
I know. You had to think there for a minute. You're thinking, wait, is he just reading from the teleprompter that was written for him by John Hannity? Or does he really mean it? So that gave you food for thought, right?
Right. Well, because we have the Trump factor, and people are going to, like I told you before, I think I said on the air, if the Democrats had a goat for a nominee, people would be voting for the goat just because it's not Trump.
I think they should have nominated a puppy. Nominate a puppy. There's nothing. To the best of my knowledge, I didn't see anything in the Constitution that you can't nominate a puppy.
You can, Bob. Why not? A pound puppy.
Little puppy.
Bob, I'd like to hear just one caller call, just one, please, to call in and say, look, can't stand Trump, never vote for him. I will admit the one I'm going to vote for is not worthy of voting for. Not a good candidate at all. Doesn't have many good qualities at all to be able to run the country. I want to hear somebody say that. Admit that she's not a good candidate, but you're still going to vote for her because you hate Trump that much. I'd like to hear somebody say that because, Bob, that's the truth, and nobody ever spits it out. I never hear them.
Well, gosh, I hope they do.
Go to work, man. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dave. 9:42 at WNBF. It's just fun and frolic until someone gets hurt. Hi, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Sandy from Port Dick, and I want to talk about the little Chinese problems we're having in this
Spygates. Spygates. The Chinese spies have infiltrated the upper echelons of New York State government.
Yeah. Am I on?
Yes, the floor is yours.
All right. First of all, to a previous caller, I love Donald Trump. I am voting for Donald Trump. If I have to crawl to the polls, I will be there and vote for Donald Trump. He's our only hope to save this country, period. And you were saying, well, he was going to be a dictator. If you listen to the rest of his statement on that, which nobody on the left ever did, and he said, I'm going to be a dictator because I'm going to close the border. I'm going to be a dictator because I'm going to bring jobs back to the USA from foreign countries. I'm going to be a dictator because I'm going to raise wages for Americans, for the middle class that have been forgotten and taxed to death. And all on and on and on. That was the beginning of his statement. Nobody ever listened to the rest of it. They just picked up on that and let it go. And that's the left wing. Okay, now I want to talk about Hochul and the Chinese connection. She had to know that these people were connected to China.
She knew, and that's why she fired Linda Sun. She found out,
okay.
Well, I don't know, she found out, hard to say, apparently early last year, and so she fired Linda Sun in March of last year, and according to Hochul, or at least her spinmeister, I don't think Hochul has said anything in public about this, but no. I believe that the claim is from the Hochul PR operation is that they fired Linda Sun when they found out she was up to no good.
Yeah, well, I
remember who. By the way, let's be clear on this. Remember who hired Linda Sun?
I don't know who hired her.
Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, okay.
So,
right,
and again, I'm not defending having a Chinese spy as your deputy chief of staff. I mean,
right.
That also is something that Kathy Hochul needs to explain, and there's no better forum for Kathy Hochul to explain what happened there than by calling this program at 11:10 today and answering a few questions from me and just setting the record straight. But the most important thing at the moment, is that Linda Sun was inherited by Kathy Hochul because Linda Sun was hired by Andrew Cuomo.
Well, then that's just another reason. Here we have another left-wing Democratic.
There you go. Say
York.
No more. Say no more. Democrats, Sandy, the Democrats control everything in Albany. Everything.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Top to bottom. Even what soups are offered in the Capitol cafeteria. Democrats decide.
Well, and here's another thing, Bob. At the national level, when you have Kamala and her running mate, little Timmy, he has been to China 30 times. 30 times.
Probably with Linda Sun. Probably in a hotel room.
Well, he was even married.
Where's the video? There you go. Where's the video?
Yeah.
Where's the justice? Where's the peace?
Here we go. Here's the Chinese connection with the Democrats running for president and vice president. People in New York State, please wake up. Take a look at these candidates and what they're doing and where they've been and their what they want to do to this country. And then make up your mind and go to the polls in person and vote. Whether you go early or on election day, it doesn't matter. Just go and vote. That's all I have to say, Bob.
Thank you. Well put. Thank you, Sandy. 947 WNBF. We listen to the voices of the people. And we are fed up. And when I say we, I mean you, the listener. Personally, I'm just the host of the program. I'm a facilitator. I just make observations and report the information as it comes in. I'm not fed up. I know you, as a listener, you're fed up with a culture of corruption. So speak out. Speak out. If you're sick and tired of corruption in Albany, speak out. This is the place. Somebody in Albany, I bet, is listening. 948 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
This is Paul from West Windsor.
Welcome, Paul.
Well, I've been listening this morning, and I'm a little upset that people feel that they had to be fearful about Donald Trump. He did the Abraham Accords. He calmed down the Rocket Man over in North Korea. He's done everything to prevent a war, and he even says that these wars never would have happened if he was president.
Hey,
now people
talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. You know, I could say that too. If I was president, I could say that the trouble that happened last October 7th wouldn't have happened. Makes no difference. Talk is cheap. Anybody can say anything, and that guy does.
Abraham Accords? What about the Abraham Accords?
Yeah, what about it? The bottom line is Donald Trump had better stop making statements that wars that and conflicts and terrorism that's happened since he left office, making idle statements that it wouldn't have happened if he had been in charge. Anybody can say that. Keith Uberman could say that. I could say it. It's meaningless. It's meaningless.
He went to North Korea and calmed down the Rocket Man.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
Becoming buddies with Kim Jong-un. Yeah, put that on your resume.
Well, would you rather have him as an enemy or as a person that thought well of you?
I'd rather have him open up North Korea to democracy. Where's that?
Well,
Donald Trump didn't. If Donald Trump is such a big time player and is able to move mountains and do all sorts of miracles, why didn't he get Kim Jong-un to turn the place into a democracy?
I thought this was a Republican channel.
It is. Hi, I'm a Republican. Obviously, I'm not. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. Never registered with any political party. But this is the Republican channel. You're listening. We should rebrand. We should call the FCC and ask them if they could give us the call letters WGOP. So when people tune in, they know where our station stands.
Would you agree that Donald Trump has a presence when he's there physically talking to people? Do you think?
Well, of course. How can you ignore him?
Yeah,
he's in the room. You can't ignore him. I mean, honestly, if he was in this studio, of course he has a presence.
What about Kamala? She has no presence. She would be left.
If she was in the studio, she'd have a presence too. And by the way, just in the interest of fairness, I want to personally invite both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to come into this studio and answer a few questions from me. I'll ask them questions for 10 minutes, and then for the rest of the hour, I'll open up the phones and listeners can call in. There's no favoritism here.
You would be fair. I would love to see you do it because you would be fair.
I would be. See, that's the thing. You know, some people think just because I'm Bob in Binghamton that I'm not going to be fair. I guarantee you, perhaps, I mean, I'm not going to make a claim that I would offer the fairest interview ever, but I'll tell you what, it pains me to say it, but it's true. If I did an interview with Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, it'd be better than the interviews that Hannity does. Hannity's interviews come across as infomercials.
I have a lot of respect for you, sir.
Thank you. I mean, I try. And look, I'm hosting this program every day with the goal of trying to make it interesting and compelling. So I want people to sit up and take notice and pay attention. This is not background music. This is foreground conversation. So, of course, I want people to be motivated and energized and sometimes compelled to call. And you can't do it as I think you appreciate, and I think most listeners understand. You can't get people motivated to call if every time people call, I say, yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, you got to get people somewhat fired up. I mean, that's the whole point of having a talk show.
People like you, and they're going to keep listening just to hear your input.
Well, that's what I love, I love.
I will never stop listening.
Well, I love hearing from people in West Windsor and Port Dickinson and Vestal and Owego. I mean, this is what it's about. This is America. This is the type of show.
We're having a conversation.
Yeah. And that's what I love. I love this.
Bob, you have a good day.
Thank you, Paul. It's 9:53. I love this, and I don't take it for granted. I hope you don't either. 607-772-1290. Bob Joseph, live and local. We're here till noon. And by the way, for all your local news needs, go to PressConnects.com. No, I meant WNBF.com. For all your local news needs, go to PressConnects.com. Well, compare PressConnects.com versus WNBF.com. You should check them out. Compare and contrast. 9:54 WNBF with Bob Joseph, an honest broker of information and occasional opinions. Hi, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Tom from Endwell.
Hey, Tom, what's up?
Not much. I was just listening to your, the last guy. Before Trump came in, when he announced the left-wing media, the Democrats, they were saying that he's going to have war all over the place. Even you said it. And he didn't have one war. Not one war. And then you sit there and you badmouth him. And you sit there and say, oh, well, he could say anything. Well, he already proved it for 4 years. And the only thing that threw a hiccup in his whole thing was that whole COVID thing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Let's get back to foreign policy. And speaking of disasters, because of his terrible policy regarding Afghanistan, U.S. military personnel were in harm's way for months longer than they needed to be. And he had promised to remove U.S. military personnel from Afghanistan. And he did not fulfill his promise. And therefore, he left a big mess in Afghanistan for Joe Biden. And we know what happened, resulting in the deaths of American service personnel. So if Donald Trump had followed through on his promise regarding Afghanistan, the debacle that happened with Joe Biden would not have happened. So, until Donald Trump admits on this program that he didn't carry out his pledge to get the American military out of Afghanistan, till he does that, he's being disingenuous. He can criticize Joe Biden all he wants, and it's true that ultimately the U.S. getting out of Afghanistan was one sorry episode. Tragic. What a bungle. What a horrific part of American history, and we will never forget. But also never forget that those troops should never have been in Afghanistan when Joe Biden was sworn in on January 20th, 2021. If Donald Trump had carried out his promise to get the troops out of Afghanistan, they wouldn't have been there. They would have been safe at home. They would be alive today. They would be at work. Or maybe some would be retired. They would be able to sit on their front porch in West Endicott and have a third cup of coffee. But some of them died because they weren't removed by Donald Trump when he was president.
Listen, you go back to Obama. Obama was talking about moving them, getting them out of there. But you can blame.
Hey, by the way, let me point out, Tom, 3 wrongs don't make a right.
But we're going to blame it on Trump.
There's more there's more than enough blame to go around. You could blame Barack Obama, you could blame Donald Trump, and you could blame Joe Biden. In the end, a lot of people were responsible for the Afghanistan debacle.
Well, there's a process in it.
Yeah, I know.
Obviously.
I know. I'm not oblivious. I understand there's a process. But Donald Trump bungled it. And Americans died because they were still there when Joe Biden was president. Simple as that. It's 9:58, live and local, Binghamton Now on WNBF. It's live and local. We're joined now by Congressman Mark Molinaro. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Good.
That's it? Just good? You're great.
Thank you.
You got to be great.
I'm great. Second day back from vacation, so I'm just picking up my momentum. Was on East Franklin Street in Endicott a few days ago, just looking to see if any new people have moved in to my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I drove by the house. It looked quiet, and so I said, all right, that's probably a good sign. Anyway, people in Endicott and across Broome County are still talking about the stunning arrest of a Peruvian gang leader who evidently had been living for a couple of months on East Franklin Street in Endicott. I know you have taken notice. I even heard that President Trump has made reference to this case involving the guy who eventually was taken into custody by federal officials in Vestal at the Town Square Mall last month.
Yeah, I believe he has. But what is stunning is the failure over the course of the last several months to have precluded this from happening to begin with. So, let's be clear. Peruvian gang leader, by the way, 23 murders in Peru, was arrested in Peru, incarcerated in Peru, escapes jail, and comes to the southern border. He is arrested by the federal government, and because of a policy that's established by this administration, basically we refer to it as catch and release. The assumption that everyone who comes to the southern border is seeking asylum and therefore is presumed to have right of access into this country. And so he is arrested at the southern border, caught and released, and then transported somehow, some way to a sanctuary state. Multiple layers of failures here. He ends up in New York State, and certainly to everyone's shock and horror, in Endicott, New York, where ultimately after a long period of time, our community friends, our neighbors, living their lives, community festivals and activities going on. This guy and his sidekick, his girlfriend, who engaged in this in these crimes, living freely until ultimately arrested again by federal law enforcement. I will say, without getting into massive detail, the current state policies established as sanctuary city policies also made it difficult for federal and state and local agencies to work together. And so you have this massive failure. And so this should never have happened. And frankly, this individual should never have been able to enter into this country. But we know this. I'm happy to answer questions. I also will tell you that because of the decision made by this administration to simply allow anyone in, we have a scenario where 11.5 million people, some of which have every right to seek asylum and should be considered at the border, but many do not. And now we have seen this horror come to our very neighborhoods.
So what can really be done to prevent gang leaders from outside the United States from slithering in one way or the other? I mean, they're always going to be able to slither in, but then they get arrested and then get an appearance ticket, and then who knows? I still haven't found out how he got from the Mexican border, the U.S.-Mexican border, to East Franklin Street in Endicott. That's one thing nobody will tell me.
Well, we're going to get that answer. I'm not going to say to you that we know for certain, so I won't say in this case. But we know that 75% of the 11.5 million people who presented themselves at the border, not of the 11.5 million, but of all those seeking asylum, 75% were transported by the federal government to states like New York and California and Illinois.
So you're suggesting that we the taxpayers, U.S. taxpayers, people who live in New York and the town of Union and the village of Endicott may actually have paid his way to East Franklin Street.
It is not improbable to think that. I want to be clear. There is not yet proof in this instance, but I will tell you, knowing what we know of the mass migration and movement of individuals to states like New York, the overwhelming majority are being moved by the federal government. So you ask how can be done. You're right. Listen, we're not going to catch everybody. Law enforcement does a tremendous job. But every president prior to this one had an established policy of diminishing the numbers who could illegally enter by ensuring that asylum and background investigations occurred at the border or within proximity to the border. This administration, and I'm going to be very clear, this administration, using the very legal arguments my opponent Josh Riley made in the Supreme Court, decided that mass amnesty and catch and release would be the process and the policy of the country. And so they've avoided that kind of intervention at the border. And therefore, many people get in without any consideration for their background. The way you stop it, secure the border, which, by the way, I've now voted for, I think on 3 separate occasions, a strict border security policy, ramp up Border Patrol, use technology and physical barriers to blockade, reestablish Remain in Mexico, negotiate again this policy with Mexico that we will engage in background and investigation checks at the border. And then if you do not have right to seek asylum, you do not enter. The second is, and I have little control over the state of New York, but again, people from Josh Riley to Democrats in the state legislature embrace New York's sanctuary city policies. And because of that, when you come to this state, you not only not only is law enforcement hampered in working with federal law enforcement, there's actual order that says they can't coordinate with federal ICE officers, but beyond that, your tax dollars are being used to fund housing, healthcare, and job opportunities for individuals. Again, create a streamlined asylum-seeking process at the border, and let's have that occur so that we don't have individuals finding their way to Endicott, New York, when they should be in jail.
10:18 at WNBF. It's Wednesday morning. Gee, the election is coming up in 62 days. What are your thoughts as you continue to seek a second term in Congress? You're facing the Democrat Josh Riley, who actually used to live a few blocks away from where that Peruvian gang leader apparently had been living out in West Endicott.
You're right. Well, he has a home in Ithaca and has spent the last 20 years living in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I mean, actually, the guy's worked more in Washington, D.C. than I have. But that said, which, by the way, makes this all the more troubling. But yes, I will tell you without question, I have been honored and thrilled to represent this district, 11 counties from Massachusetts to Ithaca in upstate New York. And we are working every day to listen to and learn from the people I work for, and I work for you. I don't always get it right, and I tell people this. You may not always agree with the vote I cast, but I can tell you every day we're trying to lift up upstate New York. That means fighting for jobs and driving down costs. It means supporting law enforcement, not only border security, but work here at home. I introduced a piece of legislation this week, the Fentanyl Seizure and Health Recovery Act, meant to take dollars that we seize from these drug traffickers, which, by the way, currently we estimate about $200 million goes into the federal bureaucracy. My legislation, bipartisan, will work to deliver those $200 million to treatment and enforcement programs like the ones we highlighted yesterday at ACBC in Broome County, critically important. At the same time, as I've said consistently, our job is to help, and I've been thrilled to work with anyone who's honest and earnest about solving problems. Second most bipartisan member of Congress, fifth most productive member of the House and Senate, because I want to see upstate New York represented well. And I've lived and worked in upstate New York my entire adult life, and we just need the respect and we need the attention of business leaders, community leaders, and every level of government to really make a difference for the folks all across the district.
Tell us a little bit about the initiative about the future of Broome County, the Broome County Next Chapter Initiative. You've been having some conversations with business people and leaders in the Binghamton area. What is the goal of that?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, a couple weeks ago, we had 100 stakeholders throughout Broome County. Broome has not only a rich history of being a manufacturing engine, we still have the right infrastructure, if you will, the bones for a great economic growth. There are a lot of good plans, from making housing more affordable to investing in water, sewer, and internet infrastructure, to growing new job opportunities and building up our workforce. We need all those plans to be in sync. So Broome's Next Chapter initiative that we're working on collectively, I said at the meeting, it's not bipartisan, it's nonpartisan. We don't care what party affiliation you are or who you voted for. What we care about is taking all of the economic development plans that exist, identifying some of the barriers to getting to that next level of growth, and make sure that we're focusing both business investment and government investment in a way that brings about new job creation, more affordable housing, access to daycare, and lower costs at home. And we've had now several sessions on this, starting to focus in now on what are the real deliverables? How do we get Micron's investment in Syracuse to link up with the alternate energy and renewable energy production at in and around Binghamton and Endicott? How do we get the farm bill at the federal level to be focused on Broome County and upstate farm and agriculture development, opening up new markets? And how do we ensure that local leaders, towns, villages, and cities have the zoning code and the capacity to move projects quickly? Those who can initiate a planning review quickly, those who can welcome new development, those who can look at those existing employers and say, we want to help you expand. You need a little bit of a broader space to expand. We want to move those projects quickly. Those are the communities that are successful. And I tell you this, I mean, from Jason Garner to Mayor Cram, from any supervisor to any village mayor, you have all of the right components and certainly this history of manufacturing, all of the right infrastructure. We just need to get to that next level. And I believe by coordinating our redevelopment and revitalization plans with federal and state investment, we can make a measurable difference to drive down costs and grow jobs.
It's 10:23. You're listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. I'm Bob Joseph. We're speaking with Congressman Mark Molinaro. Less than 24 hours ago, we were somewhat shocked to learn that a former aide to Governor Kathy Hochul was accused of scheming to advance the interest of China while working in New York State government. That's according to federal prosecutors who announced the arrest of Linda Sun and her husband. As we've talked about on the program today, Linda Sun had been part of the famous Andrew Cuomo administration, which ended suddenly under mysterious circumstances. But so Linda Sun faces some very serious federal charges along with her husband. What do you make of the allegations as they've been presented by federal prosecutors?
Well, as you start to read the prosecution's case, you have a few very troubling instances. One, first, while she worked in the Cuomo administration, she was elevated to a high level in the Hochul administration. You have a scenario where staff had acknowledged that she was, in essence, they didn't know she was receiving gifts, but she's driving around a Ferrari. They have a house in Hawaii. They have a several $1 million home here in New York. Those are clear red flags. I mean, if I had a deputy county executive who was driving in a Maserati, I'd probably say, hey, how'd you buy that? But then beyond those indicators, you also had this individual sort of rewriting text for the governor, I think when she was lieutenant governor, in essence, tamping down pro-Taiwan and tamping up pro-Chinese language. And then lastly, you have a scenario, it seems, during COVID, where she orchestrated a private conversation, apparently off record. No, we don't seem to see this in any record, between the Cuomo administration and Chinese leadership about COVID. Now, the details of that conversation, the federal government, I'm sure, is going to suggest was a bit more nefarious than simple coordination. But you have this intense amount of impact in the state. And what's unique, and I, again, because I spent some time obviously in state government as well, New York does engage in foreign relations. California does. Not every state really has an effective or large foreign relations unit. New York does and functions almost in some ways as a country unto itself, sadly, at times to our detriment. But this kind of activity made it easy for this spy to infiltrate and sort of prop up these pro-Chinese, or at least Chinese-friendly policies and conversations. This needs to be investigated not only from a criminal perspective, but it does from an administrative, right? How does this individual get hired? How does this individual accelerate in the administration? Who knew what, when, and why weren't steps taken to investigate? The last I'll tell you, without prolonging this, every state official has to fill out a financial disclosure form. I had to, and of course I do now as a member of Congress. You'll see, by the way, that I don't have any individual stocks. I don't have any gifts that people have given me. You have to disclose these sorts of things. But in her case, either she would have identified some of these things like new real estate, or she would have lied on those forms. Either way, somebody should have caught that, and that they didn't speaks to the level of incompetence and the oversight and accountability that exists within state government. But
well, that was leading to my next question. Do you get a sense that Governors Cuomo and Hochul were oblivious or just ignorant about perhaps spy operations? I'll call it Spygate for shorthand. That spying was underway with someone who ultimately was in a position of significant power. Obviously, she wasn't the woman behind the curtain, but still, she ultimately rose to a position where she did have influence, and where, according to the federal prosecutors, she was able to actually stop certain things in their tracks. Whether or not Kathy Hochul knew about it, seems that Kathy Hochul should have known about it.
That's where I land. Kathy Hochul should have known about it. And so obviously, if I want to be strictly partisan, I would tell you this was a failure at every level, and the governor should be held accountable. I do think there's some reason to try to understand how this happens. But I will tell you, were I lieutenant governor or now as a member of Congress, if one of my staff people was rewriting my speeches to take pro-Taiwan language out and put, in essence, Chinese neutral or pro-Chinese language into my speeches, I think I'd ask, why are we doing that? I think if, and you've dealt with some of my staff, if somebody drove in a car that, quite frankly, I know they can't afford, I might ask, how did you get that? And then with those questions, I might say to perhaps the county attorney when I was county executive, could you pull their financial disclosure form? Because I really need to know if there's an exposure here. How did they get that new house in Hawaii? Or did they claim that new house in Hawaii? So my point is, it doesn't take a rocket scientist nor a fairly intelligent individual to at least have seen the red flags. So now I will be slightly partisan. This is what happens when you have a single party running government forever. They get lazy, they get infiltrated, and the oversight isn't there. And so these kinds of behaviors can be overlooked because there isn't the same level of scrutiny, and that's really problematic. And I tell people this all the time. The New York state government has been paralyzed and corrupted, and sort of the oversight institutions, they're sort of casual in their work. That can't be. That's why you want a healthy back and forth between the political parties. It's why you want the checks and balances. It's why, by the way, as a member of Congress, I want to hold an administration, Republican or Democrat, accountable. That's our job. And so you don't have that kind of thing in state government. But yes, short answer to your question, anyone should have been able to figure this out, especially since this individual was rewriting her very speeches. I mean, it wasn't like there was some casual interaction. We know, at least through the charges, that the Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul's speeches were being rewritten to zero out pro-Taiwan language. You'd at least ask, why are you so interested in that? or what would drive you to make me say that? Or why, by the way, would I even repeat it on the teleprompter?
It should be at a minimum. It should be a lesson for all elected officials at all levels. If somebody working for you is doing things that don't seem appropriate for their position, I mean, say if somebody was coming in here and reworking my stuff on the teleprompter, I would ask questions.
You're absolutely right. It says what I said. I mean, listen, when I was county executive, I had political appointments. I say political appointments, appointed officials. First, I will tell you, as county executive, we appointed irrespective of party, but we had the strictest ethics law in the state. We adopted a strict ethics code, which allowed for this kind of checks and balances. But even so, I mean, if I pulled my car into the lot and somebody were sitting next to me and he drove in a vehicle that I know his salary or her salary couldn't afford, I might at least raise a question. If somebody said to me, I'm going off to my home in Hawaii, I'd say, where'd you pick up that house? There's just sort of basic sort of instincts that you have that you should use. But you're right. Every level of government needs these checks and balances, which, by the way, is why, I'll use this as an opportunity. I've never had an opponent who will do this, and I still don't. I release my taxes. I release my financial disclosure forms because you have every right to know. I don't have any private stocks. I don't have any gifts that I've received. My household income combined is my a congressional salary, and my wife's a preschool teacher. We have that for full display. We have 4 kids. We tell you what our mortgage costs are. I think my mortgage is $3,100 a month now. My property taxes are about $6,000. I think you have that level of transparency and then be held accountable to it.
Congressman Mark Molinaro, thanks for joining us. We'll be talking with you and, of course, your challenger, Democrat Josh Riley, in the coming weeks. November 5th will be here. November 5th will be here before you know it.
Indeed. I've agreed to 6 separate debates with my opponent. I hope he agrees to more than the one that he's agreed to so far.
Which one has he agreed to?
One in Albany, New York.
Is that going to be on the Albany Times-Union?
Albany Times-Union and cable. We agreed to 6 separate debates all across the district. I think that's more than appropriate. He's agreed to 1.
All right. Well, I'll be watching.
Good. I'll be there.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Be well.
It's 10:32 at WNBF with Bob Joseph. I'll be watching. Sure, that makes the debate organizers happy. Oh, good. Bob will be watching. Okay, well, we'll step up our game. That's what I love about this time of year. September and October, debate season. I love a good debate. I do. I love them all. 607-772-1290. So, what's your thought? Do you have a thought? We chatted with Mark Molinaro there for a bit. He gave us some of his thoughts. Josh Riley was here, I think it was a little less than 2 weeks ago. He stopped in. He gave us some thoughts. Hey, we're here. We're here for the candidates. And, of course, most importantly, we're here for you, our loyal audience. 607-772-1290. Remember, you can stay connected with Binghamton Now using the free WNBF app. We're on the air at 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. 10:35, with all the information that you're going to need today. So if you need information, you don't have to wait till later in the day when they overload you with information. This is just the right amount of information. Not too little, not too much. It's not an information overload. It's just good, clean information, as well as callers. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Bob. It's Robin Port Crane. Well, you were gone last week. There were some pretty interesting stories in the news. I don't know if you kept up at all.
No, but tell me the most interesting story.
It's a tie. Can I go 2?
Sure, go 3. Give me 3 interesting stories first.
Well, let's see. I got 2 off the top of my head. One was the government had to revise their number of jobs created statistics in the last 3 years, down 818,000 jobs, less than what they told us. That's 30%. That's pretty significant. The second story I'd have to say is probably Homeland Security. They put out that report last week. It's not 83,000 children unaccounted for. It's 291,000 children unaccounted for. And presumed some of them, they said, are in child sex trafficking. DHS, Bob. Our government's the biggest child sex trafficker. Can you believe it?
No, I can't. But what was the other story? What was the other story?
Arlington Cemetery.
Oh, that I heard about. I heard there was some sort of kerfuffle about the photo op over at Arlington Cemetery.
Well, the families asked Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to attend. Joe Biden and Kamala never responded, according to the 13 families, these Gold Star families. And Donald Trump showed up, and some official tried to get in their face and say, it's not to be used for we can't have political things here. And the families came to Donald Trump's defense.
Well, that's okay. I mean, the families can say what they want. Families don't control the cemetery, and the families do not write the rules or regulations. So it'd be like me going to some place and say, oh, well, somebody I invited is allowed there. And then whoever's responsible for enforcing rules and regulations says, but here, take a look at the rules and regulations. These are the rules and regulations. It makes no difference what you think.
Well, I say you still have to have sympathy for these 13 families.
I have sympathy, but they also have to have respect for rules and regulations. That's why I assume that's why their loved ones who died, that's why they went to serve their nation. Because we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of rules. We're a nation of regulations, and they must be respected.
Mm-hmm. Bob, is that why the borders are still open?
Yes, that's why the borders are still open.
Well, hey, here's one you didn't catch on. I haven't heard anything on your show, and I've been listening pretty good since you've been back.
Thank you.
In Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, and Denver, Colorado.
Oh, the apartment complexes. Don't get me started. Don't get me started, Rob from Port Crane. I've been assiduously trying to avoid these apartment complex takeovers. Don't you push my button.
Oh, these are our new neighbors, people. Welcome,
Well, it's Colorado. At least it's not happening in Endicott.
If the guy was living...
It's not happening in Endicott yet, I meant to say. Yet. That house where he was living on East Franklin Street, that's a few blocks from a big apartment complex. Imagine if that alleged Peruvian gang leader who is suspected of killing nearly 24 people in Peru, imagine if he brought some of his gangs to that apartment complex that's just over the tracks from where he was living on East Franklin Street. Rob, imagine that.
Yeah.
What then?
He was... Bob, how many more are there of him?
Many. Many. We have no way of knowing. There could be lots of gang leaders living in Endicott, even in Endwell.
Mm-hmm.
There is absolutely no way, because the federal government refuses to track these gang leaders as they slither in across the southern border.
Yes, thanks to the last 3.5 years of the Biden-Harris administration, this is what we have. Bob, it's a mess. Oh, one more thing.
One more. Just one more thing.
Mark Zuckerberg had to admit that the government asked him to kill the Hunter Biden story and COVID criticism.
Well, that makes sense. First of all, this Hunter Biden story, and I think my position on the Hunter Biden story has been crystal clear. The New York Post taking information that was illegally obtained and then smearing it across the front page. There's no way. The New York Post ought to be sued by Hunter Biden.
It was not illegally obtained.
Well, it was wrong. If it wasn't illegal, it was wrong. The New York Post ought to apologize to Hunter Biden and the entire Biden crime family.
Yeah.
Am I right? Am I right, people?
You got the last 3 words right.
I just did that. I threw you a bone. I just wanted to see if you were listening.
Oh,
I'm obviously it's not a crime family. It's a wonderful family. It reminds me of that PBS series back in the 70s, An American Family. It's heartwarming. I mean, they've been through trials and tribulations. They've dealt with tragedies, and they also have dealt with some successes, like most families. But through thick and thin, they've worked to stay together and support each other.
Yeah, through 20 shell companies and 20.
Whatever. Hey. If I had that kind of money, I wouldn't put together just 20 shell companies. I'd put together 40. Appreciate your call. Thank you. It's 10:42 at WNBF. Again, you have to question what kind of a newspaper would put somebody's private information on the front page just to make a buck. Just to make a buck. Think about if you had a laptop and for some reason you lost it, or you took it to some place to be repaired, and for some reason you didn't pick it up, and then months later, you wake up and see on the front page of Press and Sun Bulletin all the stuff that was on your laptop. It's not right. You don't do that. Where is the respect for privacy? Rupert Murdoch should explain. His newspaper, the New York Post newspaper, I think, violated Hunter Biden's privacy by smearing all of that information from his laptop on the front page of their fine tabloid paper. Hi, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Well, Wow, beautiful blue sky mornings, Bob. This is DJ in Binghamton. How's everyone?
Good. I'm on the talk deck.
Well, I know. Are you standing up?
I'm standing up on the talk deck. Look at me. Look at me.
Just like Roger Neal, you guys always stand. I would stand, too. I could stand easily for 3 hours. I stand up and eat sometimes. Well, it was good to hear my brother from another mother, Rob, and all the callers today. I don't know. It is silly season, as Barack Hussein Obama said, and, people have all their opinions. I have mine. I try not to talk about it because your eyes are so... I'm going to tell you something, Bob. Your eyes are so blue because you're full of goodness and kindness. See what I did there? I just countered what that one guy said. Is he coming back, by the way?
No,
that was a different...
he will not be back.
No, that was Tom from Susquehanna that said your eyes are brown.
Well, okay, he'll be back. The other guy ain't coming back. Anyway, Tom from Susquehanna, he's welcome to call.
He's a former police officer.
Yeah, he's a former NYPD. He's good people.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's a retired NYPD. So, yes, he's good people. Tom from Susquehanna, good people, right there. I wish every American was like Tom from Susquehanna.
I do have one thing, though. He said he called me that guy. He didn't know my name. Now,
don't take
be a felony.
Don't take offense.
That should be a felony.
Don't be offended. See, that's one thing that I know you're just joking. Yeah. One of the things, though, on a serious note, one thing that does trouble me is how people sometimes seem to get so easily offended. And it's like, don't be offended. Just hang up. Am I right?
I'm glad.
Wait, DJ, am I right? Don't be offended. Just hang up.
Listen, let me tell you something. The only time you've been wrong was 1984, and I think it was December, one time in your whole life.
It happened one time. And I vowed, after I was embarrassed by a singular mistake, I vowed it would not happen again.
Well, I want to say I'm glad summer is over. I love the fall. And the allergic rhinitis goes away, and these stuff usually mid-August. But what's on the agenda for today? What are we doing, Bob?
I don't know. I mean, I have some stories I have to go out and check. So if you see me driving around, you keep an eye. If you're out around Front Street, and you know where I mean, you keep an eye around 12:47 this afternoon. If you see me, wave.
I will definitely wave and slow down and talk to you.
Thank you, Deej.
Have a good
Certainly swerve. Oh, a rabbit ran in front of me. Seriously, I had to swerve to avoid the invisible rabbit. 10:46, more calls are coming up. Don't touch that dial at WNBF. Binghamton Now continues with more calls more often. Dan in Binghamton, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Just got back from vacation. I was up in Kennebunkport there, and, up in hitting the lighthouse in New York, and up through Portland. Happened to go by Bush's place, and they had a sign up there, Harrison Walls for president.
Ha!
Yeah.
Well,
not quite on his property, but just 3 or 4 feet away, though, right next to this.
Oh, that's funny. I've been there myself. Not in a while. It was about 2 decades ago. And I love the entire state of Maine, but that area, Kennebunkport, I was up there with a friend, and you can imagine, me and my friend, we were big friends, or we were not friends because we had never met, but we were big fans of George Bush. And that's when he was president. But the problem is, when we were at Kennebunkport, the president and his family were, I don't know if they were in Washington or whatever, but it was summer, but they weren't staying at Kennebunkport. But it was still fun to see where the Bush family compound was located.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Good food. We had incredible weather. I guess everybody on the East Coast is having some nice weather here in the last week or two. But
yeah. And you mentioned lighthouses. I love the lighthouses there along the coast.
Yeah. That Noble Light is in New York, and it's really fabulous spot. It's actually, that's the one that made it on some space trip as one of the most beautiful places or iconic places in the world, and it's still traveling in space. that photograph. It's one of those things they sent up.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, Noble Lighthouse, N-O-B. Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
But anyways, Bobby,
Thanks for the info.
Okay, pal.
It's 1050 at WNBF, the station that is serving America better than ever. Larry in Kirkwood, you're on the air. Matt in Binghamton, you're on the air.
This is Tom from Susquehanna. Oh, anyway.
I was hoping it was actually Tom from Susquehanna, but until Tom calls, Matt, you have the floor. What's on your mind?
Okay. Just a couple things I heard on your show. I was out doing some work today, cleaning my gutters and stuff. I got my headphones on listening to you. The one woman who called in about Tim Walz and his connection to China. All you got to do is not listen to the echo chamber. Go just a 3-minute listen. And Steve Inskeep on NPR had the same question. He goes, what is the whole story on Tim Walz in China? Because he made a bunch of trips there. Started when he was 25, right out of college, as an English teacher, as wanted to learn about the world. Was curious. I think that's to me that's a great sign. And if you read this, you don't even have to read it. They have it on audio. It's a 3-minute story by John Ruich from NPR, who just happened to be doing a story. So instead of Steve Inskeep doing the story, he just played the 3-minute tape, and you can read it or listen to it. You just Google NPR Tim Walz in China, and it'll come up. It's called Tim Walz Made an Impression in China, Students and Teachers Say. And then it talks about all the statements he made about China since then. One in 2014 where he basically said, it was my belief at the time that this was right after Tiananmen Square, it was my belief at the time that diplomacy was going to happen on many levels. Certainly people-to-people, Walz recalled during a 2014 congressional hearing commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen crackdown.
All right, but the bottom line is, here's the bottom line. J.D. Vance never went to China.
Right.
So, that speaks volumes that J.D. Vance refused to go to China.
Yeah, and if you read this story, you'll see that this is the kind of people we want in government.
All right.
Who are thoughtful or who are care about.
Plus, he's a beloved governor.
One other thing is, you have Mark Molinaro in there, and I don't hate all his policies. He's made some good votes. He's considered bipartisan, which is kind of laughable because the organization that rates that is Lugar Foundation, which is all Republican. But anyway, he's out there touting all the things that the infrastructure bill really he votes for some things, but then he doesn't advocate for him. He'll put the vote in, but he won't advocate for him because he's afraid to advocate for what he believes in. And then he takes the old Republican line. So he was talking today about all the infrastructure stuff and around this area and high-speed internet and all that kind of stuff. None of that would have been happening if the Republicans had their choice. So
but you remember when Donald Trump was president, he had infrastructure week. So there's that.
Exactly.
I couldn't help myself. That's some would say that's a low blow, but it's true.
No, I would
Infrastructure Week. That was, I think they put up a poster at the White House. Hey, everybody, it's Infrastructure Week. And then I think they had a jingle written by Barry Manilow.
Right. I just asked that woman and everybody to look up an article on NPR about Tim Walz in China.
Well, they do good work there. Obviously they do great work because they're national.
Right.
No, they can't call themselves radio anymore. They're just NPR. They're afraid to call themselves radio. They're NPR.
Well, no, R is radio.
No, but they don't say it. Have you noticed? Over the last several years, they never say radio. It's just NPR. NPR News. They're afraid to call themselves radio.
I don't think that's true. They love radio.
You listen. No, seriously. You listen.
I listen to your show, and I listen to Dan Bongino for about 15 seconds before I have to turn it off.
Yeah, but sometimes he's got compelling things.
Compelling enough to get me off the air.
Don't. You're supposed to listen 24/7.
I
Come
try
on.
to. He's one guy I can't listen to.
I actually, here's the thing about Bongino. I was skeptical at first. I was very skeptical because he had big shoes to fill when, unfortunately, Rush Limbaugh left us too early. Then stations across the nation were struggling to find somebody capable and competent and also dependable. That's another thing. The main thing for talk shows, Matt, is you have to show up every day. It's one thing to say, oh, I want to be a talk show host, and then when the rubber meets the road, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Do I have to be in every day? And it's like, yes, that's the whole point. And look at Dan Bongino. He's there most of the time. So I give him credit. Showing up.
You're making that much money to spew the conspiracy.
Hey, it's not spewing.
Yes, it is spewing.
No, it's providing his worldview.
Because he doesn't even take any phone calls. The guy's a spewer. He doesn't even allow
You make it sound like he has no redeeming value.
He has no redeeming social value that I've ever heard.
He has a great redeeming value. He gives us insight. I got to tell you, as a former Secret Service employee, he gives me some insight into how operations get botched. I'm serious.
He's the one that's saying, he believes that he hasn't come out and completely said it, but he pretty much is trying to spin the thing that the assassination attempt on Trump was somehow, some kind of a deep state operation. Anybody who spews that bullshit, bull crap, is just, it doesn't deserve to be listened to.
Well, he deserves to be listened to. You don't have to believe everything he says, but listen to him.
Why would you waste your time listening to such garbage?
Because it's on the best radio station in Binghamton. We wouldn't put it on.
Radio gets a bad name.
Hey, he does his best. I respect the fact that he does his best, and he brings a new perspective to talk radio that we didn't have until he got to the scene.
Okay, corporate. You have to say that, I guess, because you're a corporate part of the corporate radio structure. But he doesn't do anything.
I don't have to say anything.
Okay.
I just gave you my opinion. You could say, I disagree with your opinion, but thank you for offering your personal. That's my personal opinion. He brings a new perspective that we didn't have before, and that's what I like. I love hearing new voices and new perspectives. Appreciate your call. It's Matt from Binghamton. Hey, we appreciate all perspectives here at the station. We've got more perspectives, more calls coming right up. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to News Radio, WNBF. Vinny from Binghamton, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Bob. I'm a day late, but welcome back. We had a great vacation. I listened to you yesterday. I didn't have time to call in. But, I couldn't agree more with Matt Ryan, who just called in before the break. I agree with him 1,000% on Molinaro. One of the questions. Well, let me say this first. This is interesting. Wow, 6 debates. 6 debates with Josh Riley. It almost makes me think that something's going on, Bob. Somebody might feel a little bit, I better get out of here.
Well, whatever, I'm for it. I'd rather have 60 debates. This is the best news I've heard in years.
Absolutely.
If Congressman Molinaro wants 6 debates, I say give him 6 times. No, give him 60 times 6. Whatever that is, 360 debates.
Absolutely.
Nonstop debates. I want Josh Riley and I want Mark Molinaro. I want them in this studio. I want them to do a live debate on the Friday before Election Day in this studio right here.
And I hope Josh Riley takes everyone, and if he has more time, gets more, because I'm going to tell you, this is perfect. This is what you need to do. You need to ask questions about Molinaro about, listen, I see your flyers that you're sending out in the mail, and I see you talk about your border bill. You voted to close the borders. Well, I'd like to ask you, in your Republican-led House, did that bill pass? That you voted to close the borders?
That's right. That'd be a great question. When when Josh Riley and Mark Molinaro debate in this studio from 10 to noon on Friday, November 1st, 2024, that may be one of the questions.
Yeah. Was that H.R. 3602? Is that the bill we're talking about, which is basically a rehash of H.R. 2, about just doing some wall and closing the borders? Those Band-Aids aren't going to work down here. But here's a question to you. Are you going to be the one to tell Mike Johnson, who just came up here along with Jordan and did some fundraisers for you, are you going to tell him to put that Senate bill on the floor, that a really aggressive border bill that passed the Senate? Are you going to tell Mike Johnson to put that on the floor? He's going to tell you to shut up and sit down. That's what's going to happen. And,
who knows? Who knows who will be the Speaker of the House? The the House control, if they're not careful, and I say this on a station that is listened to primarily by registered Republicans, somebody told me once. So I say this just to give people an alert. If the Republicans aren't careful, they're going to be dealing with Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, Bob, hey, what about this?
It's not a prediction. I'm just saying that if the Republicans aren't careful, they better take this election more seriously.
Yeah, and what happens if that happens and Hakeem Jeffries goes in and tells Harris, hey, listen, we got this girl up here in New York by the name of James, Miss James, Attorney General, brings her down. And now she's the Attorney General, and I want you to be aggressive, and I want you to start.
Wouldn't that be remarkable material for Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and Bob Joseph if Tish James becomes Attorney General sometime next year?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to Molinaro, and he was talking about there needs to be an investigation. At first, I thought he was talking about Clarence Thomas. But here's another one, Bob. I just want last thing I want to say. I wanted to clear up something for another lie. He's actually 0 for 2. First, he accused Kamala Harris of supporting and buying and help paying for the people out there in the West. I think it was Washington or all those protesters, and that was wrong. Here's the second thing he talked about: Weiss lying about being a head coach. He wasn't a head coach. Well, first of all, Tom, he never said he was a head coach. Okay? He was a linebackers coach for Alliance High School in Nebraska. He was a coach of football, and he coached girls basketball. This is from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And then in '96, he moved, and he went out to Mankato West High School. He was a defensive coordinator. He installed the 4-4 defense, and that's when they went to the States. So you're like 0 for 2.
Oh, by the way, everybody, and this means independents, Democrats, and Republicans, everybody loves coaches. You know that.
Yeah. But, I mean, they say, he said he was a head football coach. He never said that.
He never said that, to the best of my knowledge. Come on, man.
But I mean, as little as that is, Bob, there's this line now that we're talking about ill-informed, and stupidity.
Well, I wouldn't use the S word. But and I don't know if ill-informed, maybe poorly informed, but maybe people just need to be encouraged to do more reading.
Well, this goes right in line with my thing once again about term limits. You if you have term limits, I'm telling you, Bob, is except for the Supreme Court, if you have term limits, the American people are going to become more lazier than they are when it comes to voting.
Boy, that's hard to believe. That's hard to imagine, the American people becoming lazier.
Oh, well, he'll be out of there, or she'll be out of there in another year.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying there are already too many people, not necessarily NBF listeners, but there are too many people out there who are too complacent, too apathetic. So it seems hard that the level of voter participation in this country could sink even lower, but it probably could.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, as far as Kamala Harris and doing podcasts and stuff like that, guys, you got to get out there and see those people, those volunteers that are out there on the ground, campaigning, making calls, doing signs. You got to go around, campaign, see them, hey, thanks a lot. Because that's all you see on TV. You see a lot of that on the Democratic side. They're going in thanking those people. They got it, thanking those people that are doing the ground game. I never see that on Trump's side. I never see that. And as far as is accusing her of, just kind of falling into the job, listen, your guy didn't even go to the debates because he knew that the people that he hired were going to tell the American people what a lousy boss he was. He was atrocious, and he didn't want to face that.
Well, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Appreciate your call.
Yep.
Thanks. 11:17. Although, maybe that's the consensus. Vinny may have just described the consensus of the Binghamton Now audience. What do you say? You agree with Vinny? 607-772-1290. I think maybe it's possible that he actually provided a completely accurate description. So we'll see what the listeners have to say. We'll throw it out there, as they say, to the audience. Anybody with a phone, 607-772-1290. Remember, our app is there for you. It's free of charge, and it keeps you connected. So if you've always wanted to be connected with WNBF, but were somehow afraid, don't be afraid. The app is free. So go to your app store and download it, and within a matter of seconds, your device will be pretty much connected to your favorite radio station almost anywhere you go. 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, online at WNBF.com. I'm Bob Joseph. You're listening to Binghamton Now. William in Binghamton, you're on the air.
Yes, I got a question. Can you have more than one person on the air at the same time?
Could, but I won't.
Oh, okay. Why not?
I mean, why? Tell me what do you have in mind?
Well, you got all these political comments from left, right, this, that. Why don't you have these people debate each other? Get two people, one from each side, and have them debate each other.
Oh, that. You know what we ought to do is invite some of our favorite callers to actually come to the studio and duke it out verbally, face-to-face here at the studio.
Well, all right, either that way or on the phone.
Yeah, I don't like having more than one person on the phone line. It's just there are technical issues that make it. It's not impossible. It's just fraught with potential. I'd rather just deal on the phone with one caller at a time. But yeah, I'm open. Maybe we'll have you-know-who and you-know-who come into the studio and be on for an hour and talk about the issues.
Either that or, bring in, one person for like 10 minutes or something and have them, somebody call in and debate.
Oh, that's right. We could have like some of the regular callers, some of our most popular callers come in and let them field phone calls. And so listeners like you would be able to talk with the person while they're here in the studio.
Yeah, I think that'd be a little, liven things up a little bit.
Oh, it would. It would liven things up a lot.
Okay, well, it's just a suggestion.
Okay,
I don't know if
I
you
like
want to
it.
do it or not, but
all right.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you.
I like it. You get you-know-who and you-know-who here in the studio, and then we just open up the phone lines and then let the fun begin. What could possibly go wrong? No, I'm serious. What could possibly... you're saying, Bob, are you sure? Think this through. Be careful. Be careful. You might get what you want. It would be funny that somebody at corporate's listening says, yeah, we just happen to be listening at 11:23 Wednesday morning, and yeah, that idea, yeah, why don't we do that starting tomorrow? Why don't we do that every Thursday from 10 to noon? As they say, be careful. Be very, very careful. News Radio WNBF, WNBF.com. Now seems like a good time to do a weather forecast. I don't believe that we've had a weather forecast on the thing today. Sorry. Some people would erroneously take away or come away with the impression, oh, Bob didn't do the weather today because he hates the weather. No, I love the weather, especially this week. Listen to it. Here's the forecast. National Weather Service, they get a golden star for this forecast. Sunny today, 77. Clear tonight, 49. Sunny tomorrow, 79. Mostly sunny Friday, 78. And right now in downtown Binghamton, 64. That's 18 Celsius. Air quality, lovely, pristine, pure air. Go ahead. Breathe away. Air quality index is 27. That is good. Remember, WNBF.com is loaded with stuff. So if you want to see stuff coming at you online, WNBF.com has a lot of stuff, including some original local stories. Oh, for example, with the stunning announcement, well, it wasn't actually announced, but with the stunning revelation that the Blaze Pizza shop had pulled its plug, we actually went out to the Blaze Pizza place to talk with the operator. I know you're saying, but Bob, why go to all that trouble? I know. Yeah, why go out to Blaze Pizza and actually talk to people and get some information when you can whatever? No, I talked with the guy, the operator of Blaze Pizza. We had as they say, a productive conversation. And he told me a little bit about what goes on running a pizza place. Melvin Quintanilla chatted with me, and one thing he pointed out is there are still a lot of other Blaze Pizza locations here in upstate New York. There's one out in New Hartford. It's near Utica. One near Syracuse, DeWitt. One near Rochester, Henrietta. One out in western New York, Amherst. And 3 in the Albany area. So, unfortunately, the Vestal location did not make the cut. Melvin Quintanilla told me it was just basically bleeding money. It was unsustainable. So they had to make a tough decision. It's never easy to run a place, and they had run this Blaze Pizza place for a little over 6 years. Never easy. But he just said we were not making ends meet, so we had to shut it down. So take a look at the story, WNBF.com, with more information about Blaze Pizza and then some additional information about what's ahead. What's ahead? Because that site, and this is another thing, you get valuable content on our website because it also points out this was the location of one of the first McDonald's restaurants in Broome County. So read the whole story, look at the colorful pictures, including that colorful van. Looks like a van that was painted by Ben and Jerry. WNBF.com. 11:27, good morning, you're on the air. What's your first name and where are you calling from?
Jesse from Owego, Bob, and that's the first time you pronounced McDonald's and not Mac.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to point that out. I'll not let it happen again. McDonald's. It's really supposed to be McDonald's because their signature sandwich is the Big Mac. It's not the Big Mac.
I would agree.
Yeah, so if you go to one of those restaurants with the arches, you know that it's McDonald's. Now, everybody else who's been brainwashed by the liberal media can call it McDonald's. But personally, McDonald's makes sense. They're selling Big Macs. They never, in the colorful history, since Ray Kroc stole the idea from the McDonald brothers, they never once sold a Big Mac.
Yeah, okay.
If it please the court, I rest my case.
Oh, you know what? When I was here in Owego at the McDonald's, one of the employees wore a shirt, but the arches are upside down. I'm like, what point was he trying to make or say? I don't know.
I think I know. And I'm not going to put it on the air. I think you know what he was trying to say, and that was wrong, but I also can commiserate with him, so.
All I could do is laugh.
Hey, look.
Hey, but
You remember Kamala Harris worked at McDonald's, too. You know the one person who never worked at McDonald's? Donald Trump.
I don't know.
He never did. Donald Trump never worked at McDonald's. J.D. Vance never worked at McDonald's. But the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris, worked at McDonald's.
Okay. The only thing I know about Trump is that he consumes McDonald's.
Yes. He is one of the biggest consumers of Big Macs. Remember that one time he threw a party for some basketball team? He personally, out of his own pocket, paid for something like 5,000 Big Macs, 5,000 shakes, and what else did he buy? Oh, apple pies. He bought 5,000 of those apple pies.
And do you realize those apple pies aren't even made with apples? Last I heard, it was potatoes.
I heard they were using Ritz crackers. I said, somebody told me they infuse those. That's why I think they actually need to relabel them instead of apple pies. It should be like appley pies, like chocolatey chip cookies, meaning it has no chocolate, but darn, they try to make you think that you're eating chocolate. It could be appley pies made with Ritz crackers and some lemon pledge.
That kind of reminds me of like when you go to a diner and they say it's homemade apple pie and you look around, there's no homes nearby.
Exactly. That's a good point. I rest my case. Homemade apple pies. Come on, man. The only way you're going to get homemade apple pie is from Mom.
Hey, you know what? That last caller was hilarious, and I thought, that is a great idea. Invite a few of us down there in the dungeon.
Like I said, as I said, Jesse, what could possibly go wrong?
That's true. Well, you'd need a security team, I'm sure, because there'd be a lot of fist fighting, And then you could repaint the walls with other blood spots, because you know it's going to happen there.
We do it, what do they do it from, what's the thing where John Bones Jones works, in the Pentagon. We could do it from the Pentagon.
That would work. Yeah. I think that would be very fitting.
And we could we'd hire John Bones Jones, if he's available, if he's not in some kind of trouble. We could have him drive his Bentley over here to the station, carefully park it next to the utility pole, and come in. He could run security for every time that we have guests in the studio. Because I bet people would behave if John Bones Jones was the director of Binghamton Now Security. I bet we would have nothing to fear but beer itself.
Can you imagine him in a Bentley doing a commercial passing on the gray poupon?
Yeah, over on Grand Boulevard at about 4 a.m. with a couple of his best friends.
I think that would make the airways.
That would be, I have a vivid imagination. It's almost as though it already has happened. Anyway, yes, if we could get JB. He and I went to UE, so I can call him JB.
Gotcha. And I'm
Get
from Owego. So
Johnny Bones Jones. Johnny Bones.
And I'm just Jesse from Owego, short, left-handed, and Irish. So there you go. I think I'd fit in.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you for your contributions. And by the way, whatever happened to who was that guy? Jerry Lewis. Whatever happened to him? I turned on TV on Monday, hoping to see Jerry Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry. He did pass away a few years ago, but he used to. Don't they have any tapes when he used to do his Labor Day show? And so I turned on the TV. I thought maybe they, on Netflix or something, that they would run Jerry Lewis just for old time's sake, and it was on no channel. I checked all 8,284 channels, and I didn't find Jerry Lewis or Ed McMahon on any of those channels.
Jeez, I got a picture of Ed McMahon signed by him from Budweiser.
Really? Did you meet him?
Yeah. I didn't meet him, but a friend of mine, he was there to meet him, and He said, Jesse, I got a picture for you. And I go, what's this? He goes, signed autograph from Ed McMahon himself.
Well,
I'm like, wow.
I never met the kid, but I did see him. I saw him across the street. I was in Manhattan, I'm guessing about 30 years ago, in Manhattan, and I knew, I had read somewhere that he lived on this particular block. So we're walking across the street, and my friend said, hey, Bob, is that Ed McMahon? I said, Felicia, yeah, actually, I think it is.
Yeah.
And you know, we watched for a couple of minutes, and it looked it's hard to tell. He was either with his daughter or with his girlfriend, but I don't know who it was. We respected their privacy, but yeah, I saw Ed McMahon from across the street one time, probably whenever. I think that was probably back in the 20th century.
Well, that's how I feel right now. I know we're not spring chickens anymore, Bob.
No, but time marches on, and we'll continue to march.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
You have yourself a great day, and I still like that last caller's idea.
All right. Well, we'll run that up the flagpole and see if any other viewers salute it. 607-772-1290. It's live. It's local. It is the show that many people listen to in Binghamton. Binghamton Now with Bob Joseph. With your beautiful Binghamton Now program continuing on this Wednesday. Carol in Johnson City. Good morning.
Oh, hi. I was just
no, I'm not.
I was monkeying around with some mail, and I didn't realize you came back. Oh, you're back? Are we on the air?
Yeah, afraid so. This is the only thing on NBF right now.
Well, based on our conversation, I think Saturday would be a better day to go because they're having the Hall of Fame induction, and there might be, some celebrity-type people
What about
around.
Pete Rose? Is Pete Rose going to be there?
I don't know, but I wish.
Oh, I wish he
put him
would.
in the Hall of Fame.
I wish Pete Rose would show up.
Do you remember when he had a talk show on your station?
Vaguely. Yes, vaguely. If you told me,
I actually called in one.
Did you? You spoke with Pete Rose?
Yeah, I don't remember what I said.
Yeah.
I remember calling.
Any
in.
idea? Any recollection of what year that would have been?
It was when I bought the house that the state took. It was I bought the house in '85 and left in 2003. Okay, it was probably 80s, 90s time frame, mid to late 80s. Before there was baseball. Well, you know what? Maybe it was when the Bemis did come into town in '92. So it could have been anywhere in that. Let's say between.
I'll have to ask Roger Neal. He might remember. He might remember when that Pete Rose radio show was on. Wasn't on for long.
No, it wasn't. And I wish I could remember what the heck I called about.
You didn't record it?
Back then, who knows? There weren't even cell phones.
Yeah, but didn't you have one of those cassette recorders?
No, I was not into electronics.
Yeah, too bad.
I was too busy too busy skiing. And doing things.
Too bad. I would love to hear your conversation with Pete Rose.
It was short-lived, trust me.
Was he polite?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but there was another fellow that had a talk show that I happened to call in and speak with him, and he's a comedian, and he used to be on he wasn't a host. Maybe he was a host on the Tonight Show, filling in for Johnny Carson. I can't remember that for sure. But he was very a dry sense of humor. I really liked him as a comedian.
Who, Letterman?
No, the guy, the comedian guy that I can't stand Letterman, and I cringe every time.
Oh, I love Letterman.
I know you do.
He is the best.
I cringe every time you praise him.
He's an American treasure.
He's a jerk.
Yeah,
anyway,
but he's still an American treasure.
It was all these things that we're talking about is not why I called.
Oh, so why did you call?
Jesse, when I've been meaning to ask you this for like months, weeks, but do you recall back in the 60s, I might not recall that, Jesse Hyde. Does that name sound familiar to you, Jesse Hyde? And he was from Owego, and he was in his 60s, and he was always dressed in white, and you would always white hat, white pants and shirt, and he was known for his walking. He would walk. I don't know, miles and miles and miles. I don't want to say he walked.
And why would he walk all that distance? Why didn't he just take a bus?
Only because he was a health fitness person. And I don't know.
So he's like Richard Simmons.
Yeah, yes, without the classes. But he, one of his famous things that he used to do, and I've seen him do it on television, and when I was working at Whaley Electric back between September of 61 and June of 63, people make fun of my memory, but that's when I worked there, between, September 61 and June of 63. He came into the office at Whaley Electric, and like the counter was out in front, and you had to go through a doorway. You couldn't see the office, from the shop. And he came into the office, and this is what he was famous for. He used to fall forward. He was a short fella. He used to fall forward on his and catch himself with his hands. I mean, if he were like 6 foot tall, it'd be, I don't know, maybe more dangerous. But that's what he was famous for. So and he's from Owego, and his name was Jesse. So every time, maybe Jesse won't acknowledge, own up to the fact that...
Did he have some kind of a joggers club?
No, he was just a one-man band. He was just... I
see a newspaper article where a guy was a member of the Jesse Hyde Joggers Club in Owego.
Okay. I was not aware of that, but is that Hyde?
Yeah.
And what does it say about Owego? Anything?
No, except Jesse Hyde's Joggers Club.
Okay,
but
what
here's
year is
a story. Well, I don't know. I've moved on. I'm looking for another story. This is from John Fox. You remember him in the press?
Oh my God, Johnny Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was
John
acquainted.
W. Fox, Barb Fox's dad,
Right.
who
I was
we
acquainted
miss.
with him.
Yeah,
he
was a great guy.
Yes.
So I'm looking at one of his columns from 2000, and he mentions, just in passing, he's writing about some guy who was a runner here in Binghamton. And then in passing in the column, he mentions how this person who was a big runner observed with amazement the late Jesse Hyde's daily laps on the Binghamton YMCA indoor track. It says, more famously, outdoors, senior citizen Hyde celebrated each birthday with a matching number of miles.
Aye.
So there. I mean, that doesn't help you a lot, but it helps you a little. It helps to illustrate what a great runner he was.
Did it say how old he was when he was doing all this stuff? Or how old he was when he passed away?
That doesn't. But now I see more references that they did have here in Binghamton, the Jesse Hyde Joggers Club at the YMCA. So that was a thing. They got together. They jogged. Oh, here it is. Here's the story about Jesse Hyde when he died. It's and here's a picture. He died at the age of 96 at Willow Point Nursing Home.
Oh, my goodness.
He died in December 1987.
Wow.
And Ed Conzola, whose byline in the press was E.J. Consola II.
Tell me that year again, Bob.
1987.
Okay, so that was 2 years after I got my house, and that was, let me see, 62, let's say 62, 72, 82. So he was 25 years younger than that. 25, 26 years younger than that. 90, what was he?
96.
So subtract 26 from that, and that's how old he was when he came into Whaley Electric.
So it says Jesse Hyde's feet carried him to fame throughout the area, but it was his heart for which he was remembered. And somebody who knew him well, played volleyball with him at the Y, said that Jesse Hyde was probably the most selfless person you could ever find. And he was well known throughout the Southern Tier as a marathon walker and jogger whose feats had become almost legendary. So this was from the Press and Sun Bulletin newspaper.
So I often thought about Jesse from Owego. You know, there's not too many people named Jesse. So
yep. And so the only three people I know named Jesse, Jesse from Owego, Jesse Hyde, the late Jesse Hyde, and Jesse James. But I don't think any of those guys are related.
I was wondering who the third one was going to be. So
actually, I did go to school with a kid named Jesse, too, but I don't know whatever happened to him.
Were you on a first-name basis with Jesse James?
Not really. No. But so anyway, Jesse Hyde began his long-distance traveling in 1910. He ran in several 10-mile races, experiences that somewhat prepared him for a 1913 stroll from Cornell University to Binghamton, undertaken on a dare. So in 1913, Jesse Hyde walked from Cornell in Ithaca to Binghamton.
I knew that he did some long, but I didn't want to boast about it. I'm not boasting, but about knowing about it because I wasn't sure. But my father was 3 years old then in 1913.
Cool. Anyway, thanks for the call. See you at the games. It's 11:47 here at WNBF. Morning, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
John from Binghamton.
Yeah, what's going on, John?
Jesse Hyde. I believe he was famous for walking to Chicago and back. But I always thought he was from the Triple Cities, not necessarily Owego. But I remember seeing him.
Yeah.
His white
it says when he died, the story in the press by Ed Conzola said when he died, he was survived by his wife, Lillian Hyde of Binghamton. So maybe in the later years, he wound up living in Binghamton. In this story, it doesn't mention anything about Chicago, but it sounds plausible. It sounds one time said one of his accomplishments, he walked from Binghamton to Oxford in sub-zero weather and 21 inches of snow. Oh, here's what you might be thinking. He walked to Cleveland from Binghamton and then returned within 20 days.
Okay, it was Cleveland.
Yeah, and then he walked 45 miles to Corning, donated a pint of blood, and returning to Binghamton in 19 hours. And then one time it says he went on a health walk. This is interesting. For me, a health walk in Binghamton is walking between the station here in Boscov's. But his idea of a health walk from Binghamton was from Binghamton to Philadelphia. So
that's great. I'm glad we can talk. We can talk about things local. But of course, I'm going to turn the page on you now and tell you that on January 20th of 2020, Joe Biden took the oath to take care of all Americans. Okay, regardless of the situation, whether they were in Afghanistan or not. Okay. Donald Trump had nothing to do with what happened to the 13 soldiers in Afghanistan.
No, I didn't say he had anything to do with it. I'm saying they would be alive today if only he'd kept his campaign promise to get them out. But again, Donald Trump, for whatever reason, was either unable or unwilling to fulfill his campaign promise to get American military people out of Afghanistan. So you're right, all 13 of those Americans, those heroes, would be alive today if Donald Trump had only fulfilled his campaign promise. But to your point, yeah, Donald Trump didn't have anything to do with the disastrous effort to remove Americans from Afghanistan. That was Joe Biden.
Okay, absolutely correct. Now, if you can call them heroes and they're American soldiers heroes, why then wouldn't the president of the United States come to their funeral or come to the celebration of the day that they died? Not really a celebration, but the anniversary of the day that they died.
The observance.
Yeah, in observance. Why wouldn't he, after he took that oath, come to their celebration of service?
I don't know. Joe Biden doesn't speak to me. If Joe Biden called the program, I'll ask him. But I'd say it's going to be a cold day in Halstead before Biden calls in.
Yeah.
But also, to your point, no one, including the former president, should go to Arlington National Cemetery with cameras in tow. With cameras in tow to turn a sacred cemetery where thousands of our heroes are buried and turn it into some sort of crass campaign stunt.
That's the liberal leap.
It's not a liberal leap. That's the American leap. As a patriotic American, most patriots would agree you don't go to Arlington National Cemetery with the families of those who died with cameras in tow. You don't, because it's a regulation. The regulations at Arlington National Cemetery make it pretty clear that's not something that's done.
I don't know if I'm on the air or not, but he didn't do that, okay?
Well, somebody brought cameras, and we have pictures of them. So somebody violated the rules when he went there for a campaign stunt, and I, for one, find it offensive.
Oh, okay. And you don't find it offensive that Biden didn't show up?
I don't know. Hey, Biden doesn't have to show up to everything he's invited to. He's president of the United States. He can't be everywhere all at once. So he may have been invited, and there may have been a perfectly good explanation why he wasn't there.
That's exactly why I called you, because you said that Donald Trump failed on his commitment to get the Afghanistan soldiers out of Afghanistan. That's what you said.
Yes, and he did. He did. He said he was going to get the military out, and he didn't do it.
Exactly. And
okay. Case closed. Thank you. And the jury will return with a verdict. Yeah, Donald Trump didn't get the American military people out of Afghanistan. So it was a big, big, big problem that Joe Biden inherited. And then, as if to make things even worse, then Biden came up with the most bizarre, ill-advised way to get American service people out of Afghanistan, resulting in the death of more than a dozen. So, hey, like I said it earlier, 3 wrongs don't make a right. There are a lot of people who can be blamed for the Afghanistan fiasco. You know, don't look at me. I didn't do it. Sorry. Well, as we've reported, one of Kathy Hochul's top aides, who she fired last year, is now in trouble with the federal government. She was accused of doing things at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. Today, Governor Kathy Hochul had an opportunity to chat with reporters, and she said that her team notified federal authorities immediately once they had evidence of misconduct by Linda Sun.
She was doing more proclamations and outreach to the community. She had no access to, documentation or security information at all, or cybersecurity. So there was a limit to it. On the other hand, it never should have happened.
Yeah, it never should have happened. And to hear Kathy Hochul tell it, she's just shocked that something like this could happen.
It is shocking in its scale. I'm glad we were able to see some evidence that was, didn't look right to us, and we immediately alerted the authorities, and hence we have this outcome.
And now suddenly there's a pledge of strong action, so something like this will never happen again. But one could also say Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul should have been on the ball, so this couldn't have happened in the first place.
We're taking strong actions at this time, again, cooperating with the Eastern District of New York fully to make sure that they have everything they need from us.
All righty, Kathy Hochul with her first public comments after the stunning revelations involving former aide. In case you're just joining us, it was just about 24 hours ago that we learned that Linda Sun, a former aide to Governor Hochul and also previously working for the highly acclaimed Cuomo administration, They say she schemed to advance the interest of China while working for us. We paid Linda's son. At the same time, she allegedly was advancing the interest of China. That is wrong. If it can be proven, again, at this point, the presumption of innocence applies to Linda's son and her husband, Christopher Hugh. Unless and until they are convicted in a court of law, they're as innocent as I am. The indictment charges Linda's son with failure to register as a foreign agent, visa fraud, alien smuggling, and money laundering conspiracy. So the question still has to be then, how come Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul didn't notice this? They were able to buy a $3.6 million house in Manhasset and then also a condo worth almost $2 million in Hawaii. And so Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo weren't able to figure out something was wrong. And so now we have Spygate. A woman and her husband who allegedly enriched themselves. Prosecutors said they operated more than 80 different accounts, and most of the evidence is in Chinese. So we'll see. I have a lot of questions. They were released on bond yesterday. Their next court appearance is scheduled for September 25th. So, scandal. Highest levels of government in New York State. I'm Bob Joseph. That's our program for today, but don't worry. I'll be back tomorrow morning from 9 to noon with more on Binghamton Now, right here on WNBF.